For more than 7 decades, one man lived trapped inside a giant metal machine that kept him breathing. Yet instead of allowing that machine to define his life, he turned himself into a symbol of determination, hope, and human resilience. The world knew him as Polio Paul, but his real name was Paul Alexander, the man famously called the Iron Lung Man. This week, Paul sadly passed away at a hospital in Dallas, leaving behind a story that touched millions across the world. But what made his journey unforgettable was not the tragedy of his condition. It was the incredible way he chose to live despite it. What you are about to hear is not just the story of a man inside a machine. It is the story of someone who refused to surrender, even when life gave him every reason to. Paul Alexander contracted polio in 1952 during one of the deadliest polio outbreaks in American history. He was only 6 years old. At the time, polio terrified families around the world because there was no effective vaccine yet. Thousands of children became paralyzed, and many lost the ability to breathe on their own. That is exactly what happened to Paul. One day, he was a normal child, running, playing, and dreaming about the future. The next, he found himself completely paralyzed and fighting for his life in a hospital bed. Doctors believed he would not survive, but somehow, against all odds, he did. To keep him alive, doctors placed him inside an iron lung, a massive metal cylinder that used pressure to force air into his lungs and help him breathe. The machine surrounded almost his entire body, leaving only his head visible outside. Most people who entered an iron lung stayed in one temporarily. Paul stayed in one for more than 70 years. Imagine spending your childhood, teenage years, adulthood, and old age depending on a metal machine just to survive. Imagine hearing the constant mechanical sounds day and night for decades. Imagine knowing that a power outage could end your life within minutes. Yet despite all of this, Paul refused to see himself as a victim. Earlier this year, on January 22nd, 2024, Paul launched his own TikTok account called Conversations with Paul. Millions quickly became fascinated by his positivity, wisdom, and sense of humor. People expected sadness when they discovered his story. Instead, they found a man smiling, joking, and encouraging others to appreciate life. In one of his videos, Paul proudly explained how he went to school while living inside the iron lung. Later, he became a lawyer and practiced law for decades. He also became an author and an artist. These were achievements many healthy people struggled to accomplish. Yet Paul did them while spending most of his life inside a metal chamber. He often reminded people that their mindset shapes their reality. When someone asked him how he managed to stay positive through so much suffering, Paul answered in the simplest but most powerful way possible. Positivity, he said, became a way of life for him. Instead of focusing on the things trapping him, he focused on the possibilities still available to him. That mindset completely changed his future. One of the most emotional parts of Paul's story was the inspiration behind his memoir, 3 Minutes for a Dog. When he was a child, one of his nurses made him a challenge. She told him that if he could breathe outside the iron lung for 3 minutes, she would reward him with a puppy. To most people, 3 minutes sounds insignificant, but for Paul, 3 minutes meant freedom. Every day, he practiced breathing on his own, slowly, painfully, and patiently. He trained his body little by little. Eventually, he succeeded. He survived outside the iron lung for 3 full minutes and earned the puppy that became his closest companion for years. But he gained something even greater than a dog. He discovered that determination could push him further than anyone expected. Paul continued practicing every day until he could spend longer and longer periods outside the machine. Those moments gave him the ability to attend school, interact with the world, pursue a career, and build a meaningful life. While many saw a man trapped inside a box, Paul saw someone who still had dreams left to chase. Throughout his life, he faced challenges most people could never imagine. Even something as ordinary as a power outage could become life-threatening. In one video, Paul explained how dependent the iron lung was on electricity. If the machine stopped working, his breathing would stop too. There was once a terrifying moment when the power failed for an extended period, and one of his nurses had to manually help him breathe and save his life. Despite these frightening experiences, Paul never stopped finding reasons to smile. On his final birthday, his 78th, he laughed about rumors online, claiming he had already died. He joked with his followers and promised them there would still be more incredible videos coming. Even near the end of his life, he continued inspiring others with his humor and optimism. In another heartfelt video posted in February, Paul spoke directly to young people struggling with life. He encouraged them not to give up, no matter how hopeless things may seem. He believed modern life often makes people forget how valuable their existence truly is. His message was simple. Life is difficult, but it is still a gift worth fighting for. Then suddenly, his uploads stopped. Fans around the world became worried. On February 26th, the person managing Paul's social media accounts shared devastating news. Paul had been rushed to the hospital after testing positive for COVID-19. For someone in his condition, the virus was extremely dangerous. He became too weak to record videos, though there was still hope he might recover. Sadly, that hope did not last. On March 11th, 2024, the world learned that Paul Alexander had passed away. After spending more than 72 years inside the iron lung, the machine that had kept him alive for most of his existence finally fell silent. Yet somehow, his story does not feel tragic alone. It feels extraordinary, because Paul Alexander accomplished something many people never do. He turned suffering into purpose. He transformed limitation into inspiration. He showed millions that courage is not about having a perfect life. Courage is about refusing to stop living, even when life becomes unimaginably difficult. Most people spend their lives waiting for perfect conditions before they chase happiness, purpose, or dreams. Paul had every excuse to give up. Instead, he became a lawyer. He wrote books. He created art. He built friendships. He inspired strangers around the world. And until his final days, he continued encouraging others to believe in themselves. That is why his story matters so much. Not because he lived inside a machine, but because even inside that machine, he truly lived. Paul Alexander's journey is proof that the human spirit can survive almost anything. His life reminds us that limitations do not automatically destroy dreams. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the people facing the hardest battles. And maybe that is the lesson he wanted the world to remember. If a man who spent over 70 years inside an iron lung could still find joy, purpose, humor, ambition, and hope, then perhaps we all have more strength inside us than we realize. Rest in peace, Paul Alexander. Thank you for showing the world what real resilience looks like.